And this to me desire has allotted. In a romantic context, idealization can feed off the many romance stories we are bombarded with from early childhood. Often it involves becoming aware of a coherency that previously remained invisible to us, like seeing your loved one wear a similar color pattern as you, or ordering the same drink in the same cafe at the same time. In a romantic encounter, everything signifies, so these coincidences are taken out of their ambiguous status and thrown into a narrative that can only benefit the final scene, a coming and staying together. But what happens if we don't like the same color patterns, if we don't enjoy the same drinks? Traditional romantic narration is flexible enough to bend incoherencies like that towards coherency. In this setting, it is meaningful to not share the same taste too. It will still feed the romance plot. I want to think through ways in which romantic narration can take place without having to bend all its storylines towards a happily ever after. A romantic storytelling that embraces ambiguity and incoherency, the gaps in a story, the things that don't make sense. In her translation of Sappho, a Greek poet and musician who lived on the island of Lesbos, classic scholar and poet Anne Carson remains in awe of the gaps in the original text. Due to a lack of sufficient conservation, Sappho's original manuscripts have been partially destroyed. Instead of trying to fill in the gaps with things that would make sense, Carson leaves the missing pieces of papyrus into the text via adding brackets and white spaces, resulting in translations like this one from If Not Winter. Running away, bitten. You makes away with the mouth, beautiful gifts, children, song delighting, clear sounding lyre, all my skin, old age already, hair turned white after black. Knees do not carry like fawns, but what could I do? Not possible to become. Dawn with arms of roses, bringing to the end of the earth, yet seized, wife, imagines, might bestow. But I love delicacy, and this, to me, the brilliance and beauty of the sun, desire has allotted. By leaving the brackets empty, Carson invites the reader to, and I quote, not miss out on the drama of trying to read papyrus torn in half, or riddled with holes, or smaller than a postage stamp. These brackets imply a free space of imaginal adventure. As many of Sappho's lyrical writing consists of love poems, these translations of her work allow us to see them as incomplete romantic narratives. Albeit caused by the lack of proper conservation, these can become examples of writings that do something romantically and emotionally, while simultaneously not filling in the gaps or bending its narration towards coherency. The reader is perpetually pushed towards guessing at its intended meaning, opening up to the rich imagination that romance can propel us towards. Another way to read or write ambiguity into romantic narrative is to incorporate negativity into our fantasies. When I say negativity here, I refer to the use of this term by Lauren Berlant and Lee Edelman. They define negativity as an inherent part of any type of relation. For them, it signifies a resistance to or undoing of the stabilizing frameworks of coherence imposed on thought and lived experience. The challenge here is to work with negativity without disturbing the way in which desire and optimism can energize romantic experience, which means I need to think about a kind of desire and optimism that includes despair, doubt, and hopelessness. In her book, Simple Passion, French writer Annie Ernaux shares her experience of having an affair with a married man. Her feelings for him are quite disruptive as they shake her sense of self and what motivates her in life, resulting in an obsessive preoccupation with this man. Sometimes this obsession manifests itself in Ernaux's sense of time. She writes, "I am not telling a story, half of which escapes me, based on a precise, 'he came on November 11, or an approximate chronology. As far as I was concerned, that notion did not even enter the relationship. I could experience only his absence or his presence." Quite early on in the book, she sets out how this type of desiring all leads to the conclusion that the person she loves is in fact a complete stranger to her. It points at a classic moment of friction in relating oneself to another person, one that centralizes the realization that one can never know the other person completely. This is a type of negative experience that, following Berlant and Edelman's reasoning, is intrinsic to any type of relational encounter. Ernaux, however, has quite an optimistic conclusion to this. She writes, "I discovered what people are capable of, in other words, anything. Sublime or deadly desires, lack of dignity, attitudes and beliefs I had found absurd in others until I myself turned to them. Without knowing it, he brought me closer to the world." Regardless of how unambiguous traditional romantic stories are represented, I have found through these texts of Anne Carson, Annie Ernaux, and many other writers a representation of the negative and liminal experience of surprise, friction, and obsession in romantic encounters. Indebted to these examples, I will end this reading with the beginning of a love story, one where idealization manifests itself in realizing contradictions in another person's character. This realization may be difficult at first, but later on results in a more complicated romantic experience, one that acknowledges incoherencies. I walk through the hallway quickly, can hear the heels of my shoes click-clack on the tile floors. It is checkerboard, but in yellow and white. You have just finished when I pass by. I nod, "Hi," for the third time today. Something unearthly about today. So I buy another bag of crisps and sit outside for a while, then remember to ask my mom to ask you to go to the opera with her. I already know what she'll be wearing when you go, a silver knitted top and a black pantsuit. She's nervous about what you will wear, which turns out to be the moment when you first surprise her. Up until that point, there are no surprises, really. You're handsome and a good storyteller, an idealized version which turns out to be too translucent, its creator, my mother, certain that she could powder her face with you. So, when you arrive wearing a purple jacket, dark blue trousers, and dramatic sunglasses, my mother gasps and thinks the day after, how is this both you who had to kill a small lizard climbing up your leg, and you previously with mohawk, and you in purple, dark blue sunglasses? Thank you.